student, I joined the competition, and we made a team and wrote a digital assistant for new students, basically telling them where in which building is going to be your lecture, how do you get there, by bike, by bus, automatically scheduling when to take it, how to be there, so making the life of a student easier. And yeah, we did make second place at that competition. And the first place was actually a small idea called Sona. But I was approached all the time by the founders of Sona to join their team. And after my company failed, I switched basically to Sona. Also took some of my teammates with me. And yeah, since then I've been like the first still remaining employee at Sona. So if it's a parking lot, it's installed at the parking lot on top of a street lamp. If it's in a parking housing, it's installed on the inside roofs of each level of that parking house. And then the vision data is taken and evaluated on that computer directly with a neural network, and of course also multiple neural networks and algorithms with pre and post processing. My career started in school when I was kind of a problem student, and my parents decided to initiate a robotics club at my school, so to give me something to do and not to annoy the teachers.
Hi all, I welcome you to the Building Culture podcast, where I invite incredibly smart people who build things, whether they be engineers, entrepreneurs, programmers, hobbyists, or researchers. It does not matter, as long as you're someone who is passionate about building. I'll find you and podcast you. And in today's episode, we have someone from Sona, which is a startup based in Aachen. It aims to solve the urban parking problem and is also advocating something called digital or smart streets. We'll talk more about what Sona does in the conversation with Jonas, who is the Chief Knowledge Officer at Sona. His responsibilities include project management, hiring new employees, among other things. So without any further ado, let's welcome Jonas Zagatta.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so the very first question that I would want to ask you is, could you tell us about your educational and professional background before we dig deeper into what Sona does and what you do there?
Yeah, so I best start at the beginning. So actually my professional career started in school when I was kind of a problem student, and my parents decided to initiate a robotics club at my school, so to give me something to do and not to annoy the teachers. And yeah, then I got very intuitively started on programming and engineering robots. Then I had my first internship at a software company at age 12, where basically in the hardware department plugged some cables and stuff like that. And yeah, after that, with 14, I had my first TV job at this software company, basically writing Visual Basic for automation scripts that then took sick leave emails and put them in the Outlook calendar for everybody to see when the person was going to be sick. And
you did that at age 14.
yeah, I got a little help from my dad. It was actually the company where my dad worked, so it's not his company. And I think I really had to deliver something. I hope he didn't just cover for me all the time. But from my personal point of view, yeah, I did write that. It was not too complicated, and I had a lot of time for that. It was some regular expressions and stuff like that. And I've already forgotten everything about regular expressions by now, but then I was able to do it. Yeah, and in the meantime, I was still doing those robotics competition, and we got somewhat internationally successful when I was around 16. We went to one European championship in Zurich, which was a very pivotal moment. And afterwards, we kind of got too old for some of the competitions, me and the team. So we started teaching other people, other students, to become new parts of this educational mission. And then teaching became my passion. And then we actually once I went as a coach, as a teacher to a world final where my team took third place worldwide, which was a very proud moment, even still being a school student, but also being a teacher somehow at the same time. Yeah, and then after my well, Germany it's called gymnasium. I think high school is the equivalent in
Yeah.
English. And after that, I directly went to study mechanical engineering at RWTH Aachen. And I have to confess, I was a really bad student. I didn't really get along with sitting in a big room listening for 2 hours. So I didn't really succeed at studying. But I found a very nice job at an institute, actually through one university project where I was recognized by, I don't know, the professor. And then he asked me to join this his department. And there we did education also for kids with robotics and programming. Basically the same thing I was doing before, but this time for money, which was really nice. So
Which institute was this?
it is the IFU Institute of the University of Aachen. It's a mechanical engineering institute for cybernetics in
Ah, okay.
mechanical engineering.
Cybernetic.
Yeah, company cybernetics, I think.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and they had a robotics laboratory where I worked as a teacher and also designing courses for students. For example, one thing I'm very proud about is a course for blind people, how to program and build robots, which I developed. Yeah, and those were 3 very lucky years where I didn't study too much, actually. And after that, even the same institute launched a startup competition, which took a lot of time. So 1 year was the whole competition time frame. And with some of my friends, I joined the competition and we made a team and wrote a digital assistant for new students, basically telling them where in which building is going to be your lecture, how do you get there by bike, by bus, automatically scheduling when to take it, how to be there. So making the life of a student easier. And yeah, we did make second place at that competition. And the first place was actually a small idea called Sona. So
Ah,
afterwards, I tried to make a company out of my idea, which failed. But I was approached all the time by the founders of Sona to join their team. And after my company failed, I switched basically to Sona. Also took some of my teammates with me. And yeah, since then I've been like the first still remaining employee at Sona. And after some time, I made my mark. For example, first 3 weeks, I built a new sensor prototype, which is kind of still deployed today. And yeah, I said I want to do a little bit more. I want to be one of the executives. And that's how I became a stakeholder and one of the 4 executives now.
okay, that's an interesting journey. So you started with doing robotics as hobby projects. You participated in competitions and also won numerous accolades there, and then that inspired you to do mechanical engineering at RWTH Aachen. And after that you got opportunities in research, applying what you did in your robotics projects before. And slowly and slowly you are now at Sona,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah, yeah. So
Funny
tell us
thing
about.
is,
Yeah, yeah, please.
yeah, funny thing is that I didn't have I don't know a hiring meeting. I think since I was 14. So I think I had the last one when I was 14 and was hired as a Hiwi. And since then, I have just been asked to work for someone. So I didn't have the pressure to be in a hiring meeting and being questions and everything. I got around that.
Okay, okay, interesting. So let's talk about Zona. We can also talk about the robotics competitions. I wasn't aware of about your experience in these areas because you don't have a LinkedIn apparently.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, we can also talk about that. But first, let's talk about Sona, what it is and what it does basically. What's the mission?
Basically, our mission is to build the smart infrastructure for the city of the future. So what we do is we try to digitalize everything that is there in a city and that is relevant, but also very focused on preserving the people's privacy. So all the devices we build, all the data we gather that is not strictly necessary and helpful, we discard. So we have vision-based sensors, and it's onboard computed what they take information out of this vision data, and then only that is used in the further process. And this is currently applied to parking, but of course everything you can see could be evaluated, and we hope to make this the really smart infrastructure of the city of the future, where cities but also inhabitants can rely on a lot of different real-time information, but also analytical data to make our lives easier, more comfortable, while still preserving the privacy of everyone.
Okay, so the main target is right now the parking problem, but it's also in other areas. That's like the main future vision of Sona. Also interesting that on the website it says die Zukunft ist Sona. Yeah, that's how the name comes, right? Can you tell us about the origin of name, if you have any idea, because you
No,
also
I have.
joined. Okay, great.
Actually, it was at first wordplay on the word sonar from a U-boat,
Ah,
where you have this, uh, bats use it to
yeah,
navigate
yeah.
underwater.
Hmm.
And then when we got a designer to redesign our logo and our brand, because first it was a community app idea, then it became a IoT sensor idea. And with that change, we hired a designer to change the logo and also change the brand. And he made basically this, the future is Sona, and also the spacing in between the O. And this is how it got started.
Okay, okay. That's quite creative, right? Starting with sonar and then moving to Sona. So Sona in German means so near, right? So close. The
Yes.
future is so close. Yeah. Can you also talk about the work that you now do as a CKO? What is a CKO? What are your responsibilities?
So I don't really know if a CKO actually is a thing. So I researched some executive titles when I said I wanted to be an executive. At that time, we were only 4 people. So basically, we all were executive, and it doesn't mean much. But I decided that handling knowledge was the most important thing for me in a job. And I think it was a topic that is highly underappreciated in most jobs and companies. So I said, yeah, I want to be chief knowledge officer. And I looked it up on the internet, and I think not many other people carry this title, even if they're big company executives. There are a lot of other titles that they generally have. And for me, it means basically being something as a soccer team manager, but one in the lower leagues where the soccer team manager is also one of the players. So
Okay, okay. That's
I'm not
interesting.
the
Also, yeah, I haven't heard of CKO before. This is the first time I heard of Chief Knowledge Officer. So that's quite intriguing. How are you like a soccer manager?
In the terms that you have a team of people and they have to work together. So, of course, I'm not personally doing the main work. I'm not coding the machine learning algorithms. I'm not training the neural networks. I'm not building the sensors. I'm not making the investment discussions. But I'm trying to manage all those communication, knowledge exchange, knowledge acquisition, and preservation with all the employees. So if I see there is a project and I think people are not communicating well enough, for example, I start a meeting, but also prepare how we design the communication in that meeting. Or if I feel my employees have some kind of question to the company or to the founders, I organize that we can clarify those questions and get forward. And in addition, what came up after 1.5 years of organizing knowledge, which is like wiki stuff, Trello stuff, meetings, things like that, came HR to it. And HR is really natural to knowledge management because over 50% of knowledge in a company is in people, and you will never get it out. So my experience is also not to try to formalize that and put it somewhere in a wiki. It doesn't work. Just foster the people that you have and make them feel welcome and happy in your company. And then you don't even have to think about putting that knowledge somewhere written down.
So basically, as a chief knowledge officer, you are focusing on knowledge in all aspects, right? From knowledge ranging from conveying technical information, everything related to programming, or or you managing the project, communicating what needs to be discussed to managing knowledge that is in the heads of people, and ensuring that it gets communicated in an efficient way.
Yes, and also what I said, like soccer team manager in a lower league who is also a player.
Yeah.
Sometimes, because in a smaller startup with only 12 employees, you cannot just say, okay, I'm managing all of you and I'm not really doing something. So sometimes, or actually a lot of times, I have to jump in, I have to play myself. Then I'm mostly a project manager. So if we're short on project managers because we have too many contracts, too many projects, I jump in and I do the actual project management. But that also comes very natural to me because of this robotics competition situation and hobby I had as a young person. It feels really comfortable to me. There you have a competition at the end, specific date, you just have to deliver, there's no excuses. And that wasn't something I had to learn when I was an adult. That's something I learned as a child, very, very naturally. Just nobody could change that. So making a project finish on time or changing it to finish somewhat on time, maybe in another form, that is something that I've been practicing for 15 years, more or less.
So the robotics competitions would mostly be in teams, right? And so you have to, and of course the deadlines would play a major role because the competition date is when it is, and you have to deliver it on time, whether you feel like it or not. So this thing also carried forward with you, and you could now use it in your work at Sona, basically.
Yes. So what we did there is, of course, a lot less professional with a little help from teachers, from parents.
Yeah.
But my daily work and the things I do hasn't changed much since I'm 10 years old. So basically, working in that team, arguing with people, finishing projects, sometimes failing and overcoming that, starting again, trying next year again, and all that basically I did for a long time. And then when I was looking for a job or decided to work in a startup, it's a thing I was intuitively, not explicitly looking for. And now I realized a lot of times that's what I got. Basically doing the same thing for 10 to 15 years already, just in more maturing stages of professionality.
And how long have you been at Sona now?
3 years. So,
3 years. Okay.
yes.
And you were one of the initial very few members, right? And how many people were there initially?
So initially, when I joined, there were 4 other employees plus the 3 founders, but we were basically all unpaid interns at that point. So it was getting a little bit of experience. And unfortunately, none of the people that were there at the time stayed in the company because they did their internship and then they left to do some other job.
Yeah.
So from the people of that time, I'm basically the first employee that remains.
Okay. And how have you evolved over these past 3 years working at Sona? Your responsibilities have also grown. So how have you evolved?
I think I went from a smart boy with a lot of potential to a young professional person where I learned a lot about stuff that I would intuitively like to do but cannot do, or where I have to contain my personality for a certain time. When you communicate with, for example, in a corporate situation, older people, you can just be an interested young person who's very into the topic. Sometimes, even if you're too interested, that comes off as somehow wrong or yeah. So I had to learn to get a lot more professional from my youth and robotics days. And then something more on the private side, but highly influencing my professional experience, is the refining but also solidifying of my personal moral concepts. So it's not like
What
I
do you
have
mean
a
by that?
it's not like I have a book of rules or something, but for example, I highly value people and I like to hear their perspective, and I don't want to harm anybody, even not in like third or fourth level ways. So I don't want to contribute to anything that then later harms somebody. That is important in hiring and firing, for example. That is important in the kinds of products you build or the product decisions you make. And I have to myself, very high standards. And that is something that you have to refine, find also, some explanation for it. So you can't just have some moral ideas. There have to
Yeah.
be things. It is based on books you've read, talks you've heard, and I don't have it written down, but for me, it's something I have just very intuitively in everything I think about, and then it's so solidified that I can annoy people day and night with it, and hopefully keep the moral concept of the company high as well, and of everybody around me. And of course, I also like to get taught by everybody else, because most people in our company have very high moral standards for the products they build and the way they work. And I learn and refine it as I go, but it's pretty solid in its foundation.
So you have basically matured your way of working. In a way, you have become more structured, but also now you think of the impact that you would be having on other people, whether they be employees or by means of your product, the customers that are being reached and other people, and become more professional as a result.
Hey, so I hope and you enjoyed part 1 of the conversation with Jonas Zagatta. In this talk, we introduced the different projects and experiences that Jonas has had and how he got introduced to the world of startups. What are the variety of different robotics projects he was involved in. But in the next part, we'll dig a bit deeper into all these projects, what he has done, why he has done these projects, and discuss these in a bit more detail, and that can also be beneficial to a lot of people who are either into robotics, into startups or project management. Jonas also talks about how his typical workday at Sona looks like, what his roles as a project manager and as a CKO at Sona are, why he got enrolled into these robotics projects, how these robotics projects helped him shape his career and assist him at Sona today. There is a lot more stuff to come in the subsequent parts. So if you enjoyed it and found value from this conversation, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so that you get notified on time whenever the next part is out. Also, this podcast is available on all major podcast platforms including Google Podcasts and Spotify. So choose your favorite platform if you prefer to listen to the audio while washing your dishes. See you in the next one.